So what is data driven testing and why it is required?
Sometimes we need to.
Sir.
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
So I was saying like at the runtime to enter some details.
Okay.
The time of execution.
Okay. Disha, what you were saying?
Giving constant values.
Yeah, same. Sometimes there will be files we need to fetch data from those files and pass it into the application. So at that time, data driven is important.
So, as in like you need to pass multiple data to your single test case, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's say I am having a field of there are two input boxes. One is email address and second one is password, and I need to test this functionality with different set of data. Right. So when I say different set of data, in that case there might be combination of if both the email address and password are correct. If my email address is incorrect, password is correct. If my email address is correct, password is incorrect, and likewise other combinations, right? So I can have multiple combinations there, right? So likewise I need to do that testing. Or the other scenario could be like on the registration page when I am registering a user on a web page, right? So I need to register, let's say 100 of customers there. So if I hard code all those values, it would be like I will have to write that script 100 times, right? So if I hard code that value in my test case, or if I hard code that value somewhere else in my page class or somewhere else, then I will have to hard code that value 100 times. And even if there is a change in any of the data, then I will have to do that change. I will have to identify that change and then do it, right? So that is a kind of a very time consuming job task, and it is not as in like practical also, right? So the practical way is like I need to keep my test data in a central repository, and that central repository for keeping the test data is either Excel file or any the test txt file or anything, right? So XLS file is something which we are which is kind of a recommended one to keep your test data, right? So let's say you are having some combination of username and password, and that you are keeping in your Excel file in, let's say, two columns. So first column is for username, second column is for password, right? And likewise I am having multiple combinations there, right? So if I need to create a one test case for this, how would I create that? So let's go one by one. How do I create a one test case for this small piece of application? So let me create a new class here, and let's say data driven test. Okay, and let me write the code quickly. So WebDriver driver, and then public void login test, and then I will have to let's say I am instantiating my browser here. So let me copy the code from here, and then what I am doing, I am then launching my browser. Driver.get, and then I'm just checking if driver.find element by.id is what is your ID. ID equal to email. . dot send keys. Let's say I am giving ABC123, and then driver dot find element by dot ID dot send keys. Let's say 1 2 3 4 5 6. Okay, so I am hard coding my values here, and then driver dot find element by dot ID and then dot click. Okay, and this time I am getting the password from here, which is your password, and then I am clicking on this link, sign in button, and the sign in button I am having ID as submit login. Okay, so this is my simple test case for one set of test data, right? And then I am just putting some thread.slip here of 2000 millisecond, and then I am closing my browser. Throws declaration, let's say exception. So my simple test case, what it is doing, it is just passing the username and password to my this username and password field, and then clicking on the login button. Right? So if I run this, it would be, what is that? Sorry, @test, and I will have to import that. Right, so I could run the test case with one set of test data. Now, what if I need to run this test case for, let's say, 10 set of test data? How would I do that? I will have to specify, these hard code values again and again, right, in the test script. This is the first time I will clear then and then check it, right? So likewise, I will have to do. Right, Disha? Sutara?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So what is the other way we have in TestNG? So we can use data provider annotation here. So with data provider annotation, let's say I want to run this test with, let's say, 5 set of test data. And for that, I will write another method here, public void, let's say, test data. And here what I will say that this is my data provider. So I will give some name here. Let's say name equal to test data, and let's change the name of this method, get data. Okay, and this data provider I will have to import from TestNG annotation, and test data name should come in double quotes. Okay, and this get data, what it is doing, it is returning object array of 2-dimensional type. New object. Remember, we have discussed about the object array. Remember, kya? We have discussed about object array. Why? What is object array and what is 2-dimensional array?
Yeah, we have discussed that, but not able to recall. Two-dimensional, yeah, I know.
So here, let's say I'm giving some username. Let's say Nitin 123, and then password. Let's say 123456. Okay, and then second set. Likewise, let me copy this. Okay, so let's say I'm having 4 set here. Let's do some change at the rate gmail.com. And here, let's say at the rate abc.com. abc. And likewise, I am having some username and passwords here. And this I am keeping in this return new object. And then from here, I'll just take the data. Okay, now what will happen? I will have to specify along with this that which is my test data provider. So I will write like data provider here is my what is the method name? We have method name as not method name, the data provider name is test data. Okay, so this data provider I will have to now instead of this username and password, I will have to put the string username here. And string password. And instead of this hard-coded values here, now what I will say, I just put username here without quotes and put password here. Okay, so what is happening here is I have created another method to get the data, right? And as of now, I am putting the data in the test class file. Just you can understand how this retrieving of data works, right? So I will have to create a two-dimensional object array, right? Because data in Excel, if you see, it is in the form of row and column, right? And each data, each cell there represents two-dimensional array, as in the address of that is 2D array, right? 0 0 0 1 likewise, right? So every time this data would be fetched, this data cell would be fetched and it will be passed to this, right? So this is my data provider at the rate data provider, and name of this data provider is test data, right? And wherever I want to use this data provider, I'll just mention the name of this data provider along with the test. So for this test, the data provider is this method. And here, instead of passing the hard-coded values, right? So I have parameterize this with username and password, and each username and password I am passing with the email and password field. Now, if I run this test, every time these values will be picked one by one, and it would be passed to this data this test, and my test would run 4 times now. Okay, so let's see and check if it is working fine, and then let me change the page load timer a bit because this internet seems slow today a bit. So let's change the time and then let's try this. So run as TestNG's test. Understood, right? How it is working? We have got okay, so we have got this. 1 second. The test report. Okay, so in test report, you can see this data-driven test was executed 4 times. This login test was executed 4 times, and we have passed the different parameters every time, right? So you can see this nitin123@abc.com, nitin123@gmail.com, nitin123, and nitin123 @ right? So different parameters were picked for each test, right? And seems all the tests were failed. So as in like all the tests did not go through with running of, with logging into your application. Understood up to here how we are doing this without using the Excel file. So we can still hard code the values, but in a separate method, and wherein I can use the multiple values, right? So the data is there in your still is there in your test class only, right? So now the problem with this is like so data is there in your test class only, and if there are any changes, you will have to again go to your test class and check where I need to do any changes or not. Right. So in case of 1 or 2 test class, it is fine to do changes, but if there are more than 100 test cases which require you to provide the data, then it would be like a very tedious job or very cumbersome task to do, like where to check the data and all that, right? So for that, we have to use the data from your central repository, that is your Excel file, right? So uh, we will prepare the test data in Excel file, and from there we will be reading and then passing to our test case, right? So that is my next task now.